The democratization of knowledge. That is a term I am going to remember and use again. That's really great. I know that my own perception of AI changed when our middle boy just got his computer science degree from Montana Tech. And I told him I was having some issues with AI, and he says, "Mom, just think of it as a calculator." And it really did change the way I thought about it. It's a tool. It's a tool to really even the playing field. And I do think that small businesses are going to win. Grid United is developing a series of utility-scale transmission line projects to increase grid reliability, mitigate the impact of extreme weather events, and provide electricity to consumers with access to low-cost resources. Grid United's transmission projects are open to all sources of electric power generation. The North Plains Connector is a 420-mile transmission line connecting the U.S. eastern and western electric grids in Montana and North Dakota. So joining us today to visit about all this is CEO of Grid United, Michael Skelly. Please welcome Michael to the stage.
All right, good afternoon and thanks very much. My name is Michael Skelly, and at Grid United, as was mentioned, we are working on large-scale transmission projects to better connect the grids. And as many of you all know, all of a sudden the grids are really cool. Like, you can talk about grids and people understand what you're talking about. But we have 3 grids in the United States, the East, West, and Texas. And we are working to connect those because when you do that, you get a more reliable system. And I'll talk about that more in just a minute. So our North Plains Connector project begins at Colstrip in eastern Montana, and it goes 400 miles to Bismarck, North Dakota. And obviously we're in the west here, Bismarck is in the eastern interconnect, and these are asynchronous grids, so they're all at 60 hertz, but they're at different, so to connect them, you have these big converter stations where you convert power from AC to DC and then back again to AC. And the advantage of this technology is that, well, first of all, it allows you to tie together these asynchronous grids. It's very efficient in terms of movement of power, so your line losses are really low. And on each side, you provide grid support, or sort of a stiffness to the grid. That's especially important at a place like Colstrip, which is, as we know, is emerging as an energy hub, where there's lots of sources of energy connecting. It's sort of a crossroads. We heard from Berkshire, from BHE earlier, about the importance of hubs and how hubs beget more economic development. And so our system will provide a much stronger hub in eastern Montana. So let me just talk a little bit more about the why of a project like this. And it's simple to think about this in terms of supply of energy and demand for energy. So on the supply side, we have lots of different generation sources on either side. And many of them have diurnal and seasonal patterns to them. So in the West, much of the electric supply dynamics are driven by hydro, and is it a good hydro year or a bad hydro year? There's a huge amount of solar power in the West. That drives pricing as well, so that gives you sort of a daily effect. In the East, we have a whole variety of sources: wind, coal, natural gas, and those have different supply characteristics as well. And they show up at different times, and so if you connect them, you can match up different supplies at different times. And then on the demand side, we have different demand patterns. So if you have a winter storm in the Midwest, we give the Midwest the ability to sort of lean a little bit on the West. And if you have like a heat dome in Seattle, or like a cold spell like y'all had a year and a half ago, then we give you the ability to lean on the eastern grid. And this is particularly important in times of big demand growth and in terms of the need for capacity. So one of the, as we heard from NextEra, there's a big shortage in natural gas turbines right now, and capacity is the big topic in our sector right now. Like where can we get electrons that we can rely upon all the time? So one of the ways to do that is obviously building new plants. Another way is by sharing resources. And we create the ability to share resources between the East and the West, and in a very cost-effective way. And another, I won't get into all the details of it, but in many cases, it's much more cost-effective to come up with ways to share resources as opposed to building new ones, to say nothing of the time frame or the lack of availability of particularly gas turbines right now. So how does one do this? Like, how do you connect? How do you go 400 miles with an overhead transmission line across the country? And the answer is simple, but very detailed. And it really comes down to what we believe is the only way to do this, which is a very intensive focus on stakeholders. And those stakeholders begin with the landowners. So we have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of conversations with landowners. And we talk to them about, well, in the first instance, like, is our offer to them acceptable? Or do they say, you know what, I'd rather you talk to my neighbor, in which case we go talk to their neighbor. And that approach of over several years has gotten us to the point where we've got about 95% of the land across the 400 miles in place. Then there's a huge number of other stakeholders. We have county officials, state officials. We have the entire alphabet soup of federal agencies that you might imagine would need to sign off on a project like this. We work with 21 different tribes, some of whom are present in the area, and some of them have a historic presence in the area, and they are interested in what happens with the land going forward. So we work closely with them to identify sites that are of importance to them, and then we do everything we can to avoid them. And then after the stakeholders, probably the most important party that we work with are utilities. So it's our belief that the utilities, they have a huge amount of work to do. They're trying to build new generation. They're trying to beef up their distribution systems. They got a lot on their plates right now. So what we do is we put together these big projects, and then we enter into partnership agreements with the utilities, whereby they would enter into ownership of the project when the project comes online. So we're proud to have earned the trust of a bunch of utilities here in the West and in the Midwest. So we're working with Elite out of Duluth, a shortly to be named utility in North Dakota, Northwestern Energy, Berkshire, Avista, Puget Sound Energy, Portland General, and all of these companies have come together to back this consortium. And we like to think that that's a recognition of the value and the merits of this particular project. So now, why Montana? Why does this make sense for Montana? You all have a tremendous amount of load growth already happening, and you got a lot more coming your way. So you need more sources of energy, and you need choices. And with infrastructure, you get choices. And we, as was mentioned, we are open to all types of energy. We don't sort of check the electrons as they come through the converter station to see where they were generated from. And that's super important in terms of both the sort of a future proofing or sort of a present day proofing of the project, because when you work on a project that can take a decade plus to put together, you have to have the ability to to sort of ride through various political cycles that we've heard a little bit about today. And you also need to be thinking, and this is maybe one of the beauties of working in infrastructure development, if you think about like, does this project make sense in 2050? And if the answer is a clear yes, you're probably on to something that's a pretty cool thing to work on. Also for Montana, when you have a better connected system, you have a more efficient grid, you can rely on cheaper sources of energy when necessary, you can export power. This all makes Montana electricity more affordable. We talked a little bit about the energy hub, and finally, we create a very important outlet for electric power generation to the east. Right now, to the extent that Montana has excess electricity, it can export some of it, but probably not as much as it needs to the west. But exports to the east are almost impossible because the existing connection to the east at Miles City is a very, very small connection that's many decades old and isn't as reliable as we need today. So why Grid United? Like why is this company, and we're relatively small, we're less than 100 people, why are we doing this and why is somebody else not doing it? Well, a lot of the answer lies in the size of the project. So we strongly believe that the solutions that make sense for the 21st century are very large-scale solutions. So we're going to move 3,000 megawatts of power back and forth. And if you look at sort of the industry structure in the United States, most of the utilities that are participating in the project, their peak load is less than 3,000 megawatts. And if we look across the customers that have signed up, they're typically signing up for between 15 and 20% of their peak load, which makes a ton of sense for them, and also obviously makes sense for our project, but it also shows you the need for a group of utilities to come together to pull something off this big. So the role that we play is sort of as a catalytic role of advancing the project, getting it to the point where utilities feel like, okay, I can get behind this. It's not just a line on a map, it's a real project. And so that's a big role that we play. And you know, as we think about this, I guess another reason for Montana is this is just like a great place to do business, and it's a place that really understands electricity. And that is probably, I'm not a historian, but I am a fan of history. But if you look back at sort of how the grid developed in Montana, it really began with the mines back in the early part of the last century. The Anaconda mine, little known fact perhaps, had the longest, they sponsored the longest transmission line in the United States, which was 100 miles long, about 110 years ago. And so the mines sort of led the development of the grid in the early days. And then during the Depression, we had a lot of leadership, perhaps leadership, you could say the leadership passed from the mines to the federal government when the federal government saw a need to electrify rural areas to help with irrigation, big expansion of dams. Then in the 70s and 80s, we had a consortia of utilities, actually very similar to the consortia that we're putting together, that sponsored the creation of Colstrip and the Colstrip transmission system. So we like to think that we sort of lean a little bit, we sort of like to lean into that heritage of a little bit of mining entrepreneurship, and then the mobilization of talent and capital similar to what we've seen from the utilities over the last 4 or 5 decades. So we are out there working as hard as we possibly can to, we understand that developing infrastructure, well, developing many things, even from houses to neighborhoods to roads to power lines to power plants to data centers, it is, we're in kind of a grumpy mood in this country right now, and building things is tough. So we take the challenge, we accept the challenge, and so what that means is we got to work as hard as we possibly can to earn and then keep the support of the communities where we work, the landowners, the tribes, the folks in the federal government who we turn to approve the projects, and our utility partners. And as we all know, that trust isn't something that you just earn and then you're done. You got to earn it every single day. So that's a huge part of what we do, and we're thrilled that we have found great support with the governor, from the governor on down to the town of Colstrip and different county officials and folks in the legislature. And we're thrilled to have gotten the support so far, but we know we got to earn it every single day. So with that, thank you very much, and look forward to the panel coming up where we'll talk about all this stuff a little bit more. Thank you.